Abzan midrange, or junk in its pre-cons era, has been floating around in Modern for a long time as a tough shell that stops the combos by using efficient hand disruption cards such as Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Qasali. After ripping out the strong cards, you then start playing threats like Tarmogoyf to finish the game or to pressure your opponent. The most recent Pro Tour was Fate Reforged, and it had quite a showing for Abzan midrange. In an article written by Adam Styborski during the Pro Tour, he broke down the metagame by percentage, and it showed that Abzan had taken down the format at 28.3%. It was the deck to play for sure, with 115 players slamming down Rhinos. Second place? Burn, with 48 players making up 11.8%. That's quite a steep drop for second place. This deck has rightfully earned that top slot due to its consistency, its ability to stop most combos in their tracks, and its impressive creatures. There were 3 different Abzan decks in the top 8 of the Pro Tour, and due to its popularity, I feel it's completely necessary to go over the differences. So I'll go over the main board staples, and then each of the 3 decks. Even if you aren't playing this deck or planning on it, this will be a primer to show you what kind of toolkit it has. So let's take a look at the staples. These 3 decks include: Siege Rhino is a big offender from the creature base. As a 4/5 trampler for 4 mana, he can quickly stop opposing creatures due to his size, and he can run them over as well. If that wasn't good enough, he could also drain 3 life from your opponent upon entering the battlefield. He's a heavy hitter that has slid into this deck quite nicely. Lingering Souls sets up a wall of spirits for defensive or offensive needs. For 3 mana, you get 2 flying 1/1 spirits, and for another 2 you can flash the spell back. They're very handy as blockers, but in swarms they can be a very good win condition. Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Qasali save this deck from the combo lists. They allow you to look into your opponent's hand and rip out potential combo pieces or early game threats. Path to Exile is a Swords of Plowshares of Modern. It deals with just about any creature and leaves your opponent with a basic land that comes into play tapped. For only 1 white mana, this card has proved its worth in Modern time and time again. Most of the Abzan menace plays Tarmogoyf, Liliana of the Veil, Tassiger, and friends, but out of the 3 in the top 8, Jacob Wilson's list happens to stand out the most. We will go over his list and break it down, and then go over the other 2. Jacob Wilson's list is a green-white aggro deck, splashing black. He has a very strong creature base that has a bunch of versatility. He is using Noble Hierarch and Birds of Paradise as mana acceleration to get to his larger elephant and rhino friends. He then plays Wilt-Leaf Liege to shove his opponents further under the water, and his hyper-aggressive approach still interacts heavily with his opponent. Discard spells from his opponent allow him to throw Smiters and Lieges onto the table due to their unique effect. Against Burn, he has included 3 Kitchen Finks mainboard, and for the combo decks, he has 2 Qasali Pridemages. In a creature-based stalemate, he can start pumping up his army with Gavony Townships. His sideboard includes 2 Thoughtseizes, 1 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Sword of War and Peace, 1 Slaughter Pact, 2 Chalice of the Void, 1 Stony Silence, 1 Ajani Mentor of Heroes, 1 Leyline of Sanctity, 2 Fracturing Gust, 1 Zealous Persecution, and 1 Rule of Law. Now, I'm not going to begin to say I'm going to get all of these choices right because I'm not Pro Tour Top 8 Jacob Wilson. However, I will go over which choices I would bring in against what deck. Jacob Wilson played against Yelger Weigersma, who is on Splinter Twin in 3 games. In this matchup, I would have brought in 2 Thoughtseizes, 1 Zealous Persecution, 1 Slaughter Pact, and 2 Fracturing Gusts. This further helps against the natural twin combo and against Batterskulls. I would take out Loxodon Smiters and Kitchen Finks due to their lack of interaction. They are great attackers, but they don't stop Twin from going off. I have included a link in the description box below that takes you to the video coverage of the match. Now for the other matchups. Against Pyromancer Ascension combo, I would bring in 2 Thoughtseizes, 1 Relic of Progenitus, and 1 Rule of Law. Against Zoo, I would bring in 2 Sword of War and Peace, 1 Slaughter Pact, 1 Ajani Mentor of Heroes, and 1 Zealous Persecution. Against Amulet combo, I would bring in 2 Thoughtseize and 1 Slaughter Pact. Against Burn, I would bring in 1 Leyline of Sanctity and 2 Sword of War and Peace. Against Scapeshift, I would bring in 1 Leyline of Sanctity and 2 Thoughtseize. Against Affinity, I would bring in 1 Stony Silence, 2 Fracturing Gusts, and 2 Sword of War and Peace. Now that we have reviewed Jacob's Abzan aggro list, let's go ahead and go over the other 2 versions that made it into the top 8. Eric Froelich and Jesse Hampton were piloting a mid-rangey version of the Abzan variant. Between the 2, you have a handful of differences in the mainboard and sideboard, which goes to show you how flexible this deck can be while achieving results. Because these 2 just so happen to play against each other in the top 8, I have included a link in the description going over their match in case you've missed it. The goal of these mid-range lists is to start the game off by picking apart your opponent's hand with Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Qasali. Your next 3 turns are most of the time establishing a powerful board state with Tarmogoyfs and Leyline of the Veil. Trading back and forth with your opponent isn't uncommon for this deck, but its trades are mostly favorable. This is a result of Tassiger the Golden Fang allowing you to delve the cards you don't need away, and then refilling your hand with threats your opponent has already buried. Now, as you've probably realized, this deck is quite possibly the grindiest deck there is. But, by no stretch of the imagination does this mean that it cannot outright murder its competition. Thanks to Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Qasali and the aid of fetch lands, Tarmogoyf can pretty much come out as a 3/4 for 2 mana consistently. Turn 3 Tassiger is a real possibility, and Scavenging Ooze can devour graveyards filled with creatures to become enormous. These 3 can wrap up the game very quickly. From the sideboard we have a plethora of answers for almost any deck in the format due to the high variety of hate these colors can pack. I'll go over each list individually as Jesse's and Eric's lists are very different in this department. I'll go over Jesse's list first. Jesse's sideboard takes a strong approach to the faster decks. His sideboard includes 1 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Fulminator Mage, 2 Damnation, 1 Path to Exile, 1 Feed the Clan, 3 Stony Silence, 3 Aven Mind Sensors, 1 Sorin, Solemn Visitor, and Batterskull. Against Pyromancer Ascension, I would bring in 1 Scavenging Ooze and 2 Fulminator Mage. Against Zoo, I would bring in 2 Damnation, 1 Path to Exile, 1 Sorin, Solemn Visitor, and 1 Batterskull. Against Amulet Combo and Scapeshift, I would bring in 3 Aven Mind Sensors and 2 Fulminator Mage. Against Burn, I would bring in 1 Scavenging Ooze, 1 Feed the Clan, 1 Sorin, Solemn Visitor, and 1 Batterskull. Against Affinity, I would bring in 1 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Fulminator Mage, 1 Path to Exile, 3 Stony Silence, and 1 Sorin, Solemn Visitor. Against Control, I would bring in 1 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Fulminator Mage, 3 Aven Mind Sensor, and 1 Batterskull. Against Twin, I would bring in 1 Path to Exile and 2 Fulminator Mage. Eric Froehlich's sideboard has the same number of options, but it has a bolder approach, and I love it. His sideboard includes 1 Leyline of the Veil, 4 Fulminator Mage, 2 Leyline of Sanctity, 1 Batterskull, 1 Creeping Corrosion, 1 Timely Reinforcements, 2 Zealous Persecution, 2 Stony Silence, and 1 Choke. Against Pyromancer Ascension, I would bring in 2 Leyline of Sanctity, 4 Fulminator Mage, 1 Choke, 1 Leyline of the Veil. Against Zoo, I would bring in 1 Leyline of the Veil, 1 Batterskull, 1 Timely Reinforcements, and 2 Zealous Persecution. Against Amulet Combo, I would bring in 4 Fulminator Mage and 1 Leyline of the Veil. Against Burn, I would bring in 2 Leyline of Sanctity, 1 Batterskull, and 1 Timely Reinforcements. Against Affinity, I would bring in 4 Fulminator Mage, 1 Batterskull, 1 Creeping Corrosion, 1 Timely Reinforcements, 2 Zealous Persecution, and 2 Stony Silence. Against Control, I would bring in 4 Fulminator Mage, 1 Leyline of the Veil, 1 Batterskull, and 1 Choke. Against Twin, I would bring in 1 Leyline of the Veil, 2 Zealous Persecution, and 1 Choke. These Abzan lists are pretty harsh when it comes to the main board oppression, but they have something for everybody out of their sideboards. Is there something in these sideboards you would change, maybe add or take out? Or maybe do you think my evaluation was just completely off? Tell me what you think in the comments section below, where I also have a few fun links that show off these lists at the Pro Tour. Instead of showing off a hand and asking you guys and gals out there, would you keep or mulligan, I want to ask, which of these 3 lists would you take to your next Modern event if you had the chance? Would it be Eric Froehlich's, Jesse Hampton's, or maybe the faster Jacob Wilson's? Let me know down in the comments. I know this week's episode has had a bunch of knowledge crammed into it, but I'm trying to look out for you all. This monster is going to be everywhere, and it's important that you know how to fight it. Anyway, this has been Ricardo with Gathering Magic, and as always, thanks for stopping by.